Hi, welcome to my virtual presentation. My name is Jamila and I am a Master's of Education graduate from OISE University of Toronto. My studies topic is identifying barriers to poor environmental behaviors. Before I move into the actual study, there is a brief background information about this research, that this research was a project for one of my undergraduate courses in environmental psychology that involved a systematic study in identifying barriers to poor environmental behaviors at a particular context. So the research problem involved CO2 emission, which contributes to climate change crisis according to the United Nations Environmental Program. Carbon dioxide emission on the atmosphere is one of the greatest contributors towards climate change. Carbon dioxide is released in the air through various means, including the burning of fossil fuels by many human activities, and one of the prominent ones is transportation. So as we see in this infograph, we see that carbon dioxide emission contributes to climate change, and transportation that are supported by burning of fossil fuel, it causes carbon dioxide emission. And this transportation is of course a result of human activity, but we also know that there is another mode of transportation which is not supported by burning of fossil fuel. So despite having the availability of transportation that are not supported by burning of fossil fuel, as we know in some cases, or at least at the time when this study was conducted, transportation, hybrid transportation of personal cars, they were fairly expensive for middle for some of my, at least some participants who have participated in this study. However, we know that in the particular context of Toronto, the public transportation, the buses are actually, most of them are hybrid operated, so which is very pro-environmental. So despite having, going back to this infograph now, despite having this option, why some people are opting for this transportation mode, which is supported by burning of fossil fuels. So to identify these barriers, our study, or this study, seek to find these particular barriers. And why transportation? Because as we have kind of mentioned earlier, that transportation involves a majority of human involvement in contributing to climate change crisis. And as we all know, almost every human being takes part in this mode of CO2 emission. So the research question therefore asks, what are the barriers faced by a group of people in choosing environmentally friendly actions, specifically in this particular studies context, reducing carbon dioxide emission through less driving by taking the public transit, or carpooling, or biking, or walking at least once a week. So the research context is an office setting environment of a branch of one of the corporate banking institutions located in Toronto, and the participants were chosen by purposeful sampling, specifically homogeneous purposeful sampling, based on the membership in a subgroup. That is, in this particular case, they're all employees of this financial institution, this particular branch, and they were all physically working at that location. And the participants were 19 employees, and every one of them owns a car, and they're aged between 21 to 38 years. Participants were interviewed for approximately 15 minutes, and they were asked about their opinions about climate change in general and the role of carbon emission on climate change. They were also asked about the impact of driving in general as a source of carbon dioxide emission and its alternatives. So the study found that the participants did not provide sufficient alternatives to driving, and they all expressed their heavy dependency on driving cars on a daily basis. Participants also maintained that it is hard to change one's behavior in driving less and taking alternative measures to driving less with the sole purpose of reducing carbon dioxide emission. Participants' responses reveal some common target behaviors that contribute to carbon dioxide emission. And of course, some of these target behaviors include driving automobiles on a daily basis and not utilizing the public transit at all, not carpooling, not biking as a means of transportation. However, participants identified that there are substantial common barriers. Most of the participants expressed the similar barriers to overcome that are needed to be overcome prior to bringing about changes to these target behaviors. So if we go back to this infographic we have seen earlier, that we seek to find the barriers between human activities of transportation that involved not that are the transportations that are not supported by burning of fossil fuel. And we have found in general these three barriers: inconvenience, lack of motivation and knowledge for getting to adapt to these behaviors as it is not a social norm. And specifically, the specific barriers in this particular study's context were, as expressed by the participants, contacting people and scheduling for carpooling is deemed as inconvenience to most of the people, and less awareness about the severity of climate change problems contributed to their lack of motivation towards changing the target behaviors, as we have just seen. On the other hand, biking in formal clothing is not viewed as a social norm to some people, and this kept them away from biking often. Additionally, a long existing habit of driving makes most of them forget about taking the public transit or carpooling once in a while. So the following theories are effective in overcoming barriers to change people's behaviors, namely some of the tools from community-based social marketing by Mackenzie Moore and persuasion techniques from psychological theories of motivation. So if we look into the CBSM, the tools from community-based social marketing, we see that CBSM discusses about importance of incentive measures and communications and prompts as effective tools for encouraging pro-social behaviors. CBSM also mentions the importance of making commitment public, as it is proved effective in many occasions. One of CBSM's strategies to communicate messages effectively to people to persuade them included the following: that messages should be delivered by a credible source and delivered in a manner that carefully mix the threatening aspects of a problem with specific suggestions to eliminate that threat. And if we look into the persuasion techniques from psychological theories of motivation, we see that in regards to changing people's behavior through motivation, it is essential that it is done by having someone committed to that act. Once committed, a person will feel motivated to comply with the committed act. And in terms of social proof, Cialdini, who popularized the study of persuasion techniques, describes the effect of uncertainty. He claims that when we're confused, we're likely to do the same things as other people are doing. So in light of these theories and also the perceptions of the participants and their answers, I have suggested few solutions that will hopefully be useful in motivating participants in changing their behaviors and reducing carbon dioxide emissions. So the possible solutions indicated the following 5 points, and they're all based on the responses given by the participants, and also the based on the proven tools and solutions and arguments of the theories that we have just visited. So the solutions, one of them included providing incentives, for example, granting 10-minute grace period for the person taking public transit to come to work. Secondly, a structural change, for example, utilization of an online message board to communicate carpooling schedule to make carpooling more convenient mode of transportation. As we have seen, some of the participants expressed inconvenience as one of their barriers, so therefore hopefully this will be proved to be effective solution. Thirdly, designating individual public transportation day for employees so that it will serve as a prompt for them to remember taking the public transit. Some of the participants expressed forgetfulness as one of the barriers, that they don't, because of the long standing habit of driving. Some participants forget to take the public transit. Number 4, posting useful links about reducing carbon dioxide emission on the company website or newsletter will subsequently increase people's knowledge about the issue of climate change and more aware of personal accountability. This again comes from the teachings of both CBSM and also Cialdini's techniques of persuasion, that when there is more awareness and it's coming from a credible source, the company itself and its website, that people are more likely to be aware of and take that information more seriously, hopefully. And finally, exposure to worldwide movement against climate change and celebrities' endorsement on this issue will serve as a social norm and social proof to act in environmental friendly ways. So moving forward, I believe we need research and finding ways of mitigating barriers to poor environmental behaviors in various diverse contexts. And it will be interesting to see, by implementing the suggested strategies that we have just mentioned and or the solutions, to find their effectiveness to promote pro-environmental behaviors, and hopefully identifying other barriers to poor environmental behaviors in multiple other public spaces would be a good idea for future research. So I'd be curious to know about your suggestions to these solutions for barriers. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.